It had been a mutual decision, a quiet, desperate act of gratitude and self-preservation. When the IVF was successful and Tay finally held their miracle baby in her arms, they both knew there would be consequences. Emotional ones, invisible ones, and possibly, down the line, complicated ones. Diran, ever the strategist, came up with the idea first. "We'll send Kola abroad," he said one evening while rocking their newborn son in his arms. "Give him a fresh start, a better life. It's the least we can do. And it keeps everything simple." Tay nodded. She knew what he meant. They weren't just thanking Kola for his sacrifice. They were putting distance between him and the child. It was the child dedication of her husband's younger brother, the third baby in 5 years. Tay sat stiffly at the long dining table, her hands folded in her lap, eyes drifting between the plates of steaming jollof rice, fried plantain, and goat meat stew. Laughter and loud voices filled the compound. Women in glittering lace bustled in and out of the kitchen. Uncles slapped each other's backs, and children ran around with oil-stained fingers, chasing balloons. She tried to blend into the background, smiling politely as family members passed her more food she didn't want. Her husband, Diran, sat beside her, calmly chewing as though everything in their life wasn't unraveling at the seams. Then, as if the universe had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, Diran's mother turned to her. The noise in the room seemed to dip just enough for her voice to carry. "And you, Tay, why are you still not pregnant?" The question dropped like a plate shattering on tile. Tay froze. Every fork in the room paused mid-air. Every eye flicked toward her. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. Diran didn't even blink. He didn't defend her, didn't stop his mother. Instead, with all the grace of someone discussing the weather, he said, "We went to the hospital last week. The doctor said I can't have children. I'm sterile." Silence. The word echoed through the room, bouncing off the walls and landing on her like a slap. He said it, just like that. Out loud, in public. The thing he had refused to talk about privately, the thing she had cried over in the car on the way home, the thing she had begged him to sit and discuss, just the two of them. Instead, here it was. Served cold, like yesterday's rice. "Doctor said we either adopt or use a donor for IVF, he added, still not looking at her. "But I've told her. I'm not doing any of that." Tay could feel the heat rise to her face. Her skin burned with humiliation, disbelief, and something deeper. Betrayal. Diran's mother leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, lips pursed. "Good. We don't raise another man's child in this family. Never have. Never will." She looked at Tay, her voice slicing like a knife. "Adoption? Is that what you're planning to bring into my bloodline? A stranger's child?" Someone laughed awkwardly. Someone else coughed. Tay blinked fast, trying to steady her breath. This wasn't a dinner anymore. It was a trial. And she was the accused. "But we haven't finished discussing our options," she said softly, her voice trembling. Diran's spoon clinked against his plate. "What's there to discuss? I said I'm fine without children. That's the end of it." She turned to him, her face a mix of hurt and confusion. "You said we'd talk about it, privately, that we'd decide together." His reply was sharp and cold. "I said what I said. It's not up for debate." Then his mother stood up slowly, with the grandeur of a woman delivering a royal decree. "This is how it will go," she said, her voice loud enough for the entire house to hear. "We will not bring in bastards. If Tay cannot conceive the natural way, then we will keep it in the family. Diran's brother, Kola, will donate his seed. We'll arrange for IVF. That child will still carry our name, our blood." A few heads nodded in agreement. The rest sat stunned. Tay gasped. "What? You can't be serious. That's not your decision to make." "Be grateful," Mama snapped. "Do you think it's easy to find a family like this? One willing to help you keep your place in a home you didn't build? If not for tradition, you'd be long gone." And just like that, Tay saw her marriage in a new, brutal light. She wasn't a partner, she was a placeholder, a vessel. No one asked what she wanted. No one cared how she felt. They had already made her choice for her, without her. That night, as the family returned to laughter and meat and more drinks, Tay sat quietly swallowing tears. She wasn't just grieving the child she might never carry. She was grieving the woman she used to be. The silence was crushing. Tay had carried the weight of it for weeks. The sleepless nights, the forced smiles, the war inside her chest. She could no longer pretend to be fine, no longer nod politely at family functions or keep swallowing her grief like bitter pills. She needed to breathe. So, for the first time in a long while, she reached out. She confided in her best friend, Nena, the one person who had always seen through her carefully practiced composure. The moment the words left her lips, she broke. The tears came in waves, tears she had buried for months under fake strength and duty. And Nena didn't hold back. "You need to get out," she said bluntly. "This isn't about the baby anymore, Tay. This is about control. You're married to a man who answers to his mother like a servant. That woman will raise your child before you do." Other friends echoed the same warning. Her cousin Chica pulled her aside one evening and said, "Don't be fooled. Emotional blackmail is still blackmail. You have a chance to take your life back, and you're thinking of sacrificing your peace for a child that will grow up in that madness." Even her aunt, who once told her to endure marriage like a good woman, surprised her. 10 years, and he still puts his mother before you? That man is not your partner. He's her puppet. The truth stung, but it was truth. And so, after nearly a decade of bending, folding, and sacrificing everything she once believed in, Tay decided to leave. She told Duran she wanted a divorce. She expected resistance. She didn't expect collapse. Duran broke. Completely. The man who had once sat calmly while his family arranged the conception of their child like it was a business deal. He fell to his knees. "Tay, please, please don't do this," he begged, voice raw with desperation. His hands clung to her dress like she was the edge of a cliff he couldn't afford to fall from. He wept. Not quietly. Loudly. Messily. "This is my fault. I should have protected you. I was weak. I let them speak for me. I let them treat you like property, and I didn't stop it." She stood frozen, unsure whether to scream or crumble. "I'll change," he whispered. "No more family meetings. No more mother deciding what happens in our home. It'll be just you and me. I swear it." He made promises. Grand ones. Emotional ones. He reminded her of their love, their laughter, the times they danced in the living room after long days. He made her remember the Diran she fell in love with. Not the one who let her drown in silence, but the one who once held her when she cried after a miscarriage in their second year. He begged her to stay. And against every warning, every red flag, every sleepless night spent rehearsing her exit, she stayed. Not out of logic, not out of reason, out of love, and maybe a bit of hope. And so she agreed to the plan she once called madness. She allowed the IVF procedure with her brother-in-law's sperm. She shut out the noise in her head, silenced the fear, and clung to her husband's promise. The process drained her, emotionally, mentally, even physically. But one day, the doctor called with a smile and said, "Congratulations, it worked." 9 months later, after a decade of longing, heartbreak, and choices that left scars on her soul, Tay gave birth to a healthy baby boy. And as she held him in her arms, small and perfect, with his tiny fists curled against her chest, for the first time in a long, long time, she exhaled. She was a mother. At last. It had been a mutual decision, a quiet, desperate act of gratitude and self-preservation. When the IVF was successful and Tay finally held their miracle baby in her arms, they both knew there would be consequences. Emotional ones, invisible ones, and possibly, down the line, complicated ones. Diran, ever the strategist, came up with the idea first. "We'll send Kola abroad," he said one evening while rocking their newborn son in his arms. Give him a fresh start, a better life. It's the least we can do. And it keeps everything simple. Tay nodded. She knew what he meant. They weren't just thanking Kola for his sacrifice. They were putting distance between him and the child. A safe distance. They named the baby Damilare, a name that meant justify me. It felt right. The child who came after storms, the baby whose presence made her feel whole, despite the cracks in the foundation. They all agreed, Tay, Diran, and even Kola, that Damilare must never know the truth. It would be their secret, buried deep, sealed in silence. They promised to take it to their graves, and in return they poured into Kola, sponsored his move abroad, paid his tuition, sent him money every month. When he graduated with honours, Diran flew out to attend the ceremony. When Kola got a job with a top firm, they celebrated like he'd won an Olympic medal. And when he found love and married a soft-spoken Ghanaian woman, they sent gifts and prayers and blessings. But life is rarely fair for long. 2 years after the wedding tragedy struck, Kola's wife died in her sleep. An aneurysm. Sudden. Cruel. He unravelled quietly. Then, not long after, came the diagnosis. Prostate cancer. The doctors recommended immediate surgery, radical prostatectomy. It would take away his ability to father children naturally. So, before the operation, his sperm was collected and frozen. There was still hope, the doctors had said. IVF was still a possibility. Kola clung to that tiny flame, but hope too can be deceitful. Months later, test after test confirmed the worst. His preserved sperm was non-viable, useless, gone. The cancer hadn't just taken his health, it took his future. And with his grief, loneliness, and broken dreams crashing over him, his world began to crumble. His mother, still powerful, still protective, was the one who stepped in. Come back to Nigeria, she urged him over the phone. Start fresh. Be with family. You've lost too much already. Kola agreed. He returned not as the vibrant young man who had left with a dream, but as a weary man, bruised by life. At first, they all welcomed him with open arms. They gave him a room in the family house, ensured his transition was smooth. Then, one day, Kola approached Diran with a request. Give me a position at your company, something substantial. I deserve it. Diran hesitated. Let me think about where you'll fit in. But Kola's voice was sharper than usual. Don't think too hard. I'm family. I've earned it. Tay noticed the shift almost immediately. At first, the closeness between Kola and Damilare was brushed off as harmless affection. To outsiders and even to most of the family, it was just a doting uncle bonding with his nephew. Everyone seemed to think it was sweet, even admirable. Kola would pick Damilare up from school without being asked, show up at football practice, help with homework, and insist on being present at school events. He began suggesting changes to the boy's diet, claiming he needed proper protein to grow like a real man. He even started choosing his clothes, signing him up for expensive extracurricular classes and telling teachers to contact him directly if anything came up. And everyone laughed. Oh, Kola and Damilare are inseparable. That boy has his uncle's heart. Family is everything. But Tay knew better. She saw the shift, the way Kola's eyes lingered on Damilare, not as an uncle looking at a relative, but as a man watching something he believed belonged to him. She spoke to Diran about it. Again and again, he waved it off. He just wants to be involved, he said. You know how much he's lost. Let him have this. He's not trying to replace anyone. But then Kola crossed the line. Kola started visiting more often, unannounced, always asking to see Damilare. He brought gifts, too many, spoke to the boy like a father trying to win affection. It rattled Tay to her core. She pulled Diran aside one evening. I don't like it, she said. This closeness. It's not normal, it's not healthy. Diran frowned. Tay, he's been through a lot. He just wants to feel connected. That boy is his blood too. But he's not his son, she snapped. We agreed, you and I. Kola gave his sperm, yes. But that child is ours, Diran. Ours. And he's starting to act like he owns him. Diran sighed. You're overreacting. Kola's broken, Tay. Let's not punish him for loving the boy. But deep in her gut, Tay knew. This wasn't love. This was claiming. And the secret they thought was buried? It had started to rise. It all exploded on the day of Damilare's 7th birthday. A day that was supposed to be filled with balloons, laughter, party hats, and cake. Tay had spent the whole week planning every detail, his favourite colours, his favourite snacks, the games he loved most. Family and friends filled the compound with laughter, music, and joy. But as the hours rolled by, one thing became painfully clear. Damilare was missing. He hadn't come home from school, and Where is he? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He was supposed to be here an hour ago. Diran frowned. He was with the driver, right? He should have been back from school long before now. Tay's heart began to race. She grabbed her phone and dialed the driver. No answer. She tried the school's line. Busy. One of Damilare's cousins ran past and she stopped him. Kenny, have you seen Damilare? The boy paused, chewing on a piece of cake. Uncle Kola came to pick him up from school, he said casually. He said he was taking him somewhere special. Tay froze. What? Diran, who had overheard, turned sharply. Are you sure? The boy nodded, already distracted by the music. Tay's stomach dropped. Her vision blurred as the panic overtook her. He what? She yelled. She grabbed her phone and dialed Kola. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer. The music kept playing. Guests kept laughing. But Tay's world had tilted violently. Their son was missing, and Kola had taken him without permission on the day of his own birthday party. She didn't wait. She jumped into the car, Diran right behind her, both of them dialing Kola's number in a frenzy. It wasn't until the 5th call that he finally picked up. Hello? His voice came, calm as ever. Kola, where is my son? Tay screamed. Kola sighed as if he were being disturbed. He's fine. We just went to the amusement park. He's having a great time. You took him without telling anyone, Diran shouted from the driver's seat. I wanted to give him a birthday he'd never forget, Kola said smoothly. Something special. Don't make this a big deal. A big deal? Tay cried. There's a whole party here, people waiting for him, and you decided to hijack his birthday? But Kola wasn't moved. Relax. We'll be home soon. And he hung up. It was nearly sunset when Kola finally arrived. Damilare in his arms, grinning with sticky candy on his face, and a balloon sword in hand. The boy was happy, clueless, while chaos had boiled in his absence. We went to the arcade, Kola announced like he was reading a weather report, and I took him for ice cream. He wanted to spend the day with me. The silence that followed was suffocating. Tay's face burned with rage. Kola, she said, voice trembling, you took our child without permission. Without telling anyone. Do you have any idea how terrified we've been? Kola's smile didn't fade. He's my child too. I don't need permission to spend time with my own son. The words crashed through the room like thunder, gasps, eyes widened, forks dropped. I'm done being the uncle, Kola said coldly. I want my son back. Officially. Fully. I want him to call me father. Not uncle, not visitor. Father. Tay's voice was clear, sharp, and unwavering, slicing through the tense atmosphere like a whip. Her heart thudded in her chest as she stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by Diran's family, with Kola standing directly across from her, arms crossed and face tight with frustration. I will not let you take Damilare, she repeated. I don't care what anyone in this room says. He is my son. I carried him. I raised him. You don't get to walk in after 7 years and decide you want to play father, Kola's jaw flexed. I am his father, Tay. Biologically, legally. I was there when we agreed. I gave you the chance to raise him, but I can't keep lying to myself. He deserves to know the truth. I want my son to call me what I am, not uncle, not visitor, father. Enough! The voice that interrupted came from behind. It was Mama Abebaku, rising slowly from her chair, head scarf tied with precision, her expression already furious. She pointed a trembling, furious finger at Tay. "Shut up, Tay, you've said enough." Tay turned to her, chest heaving. "Mama, you will not bring enmity between two brothers because of your pride," Mama roared. "You want to tear this family apart. You want to be the queen of the house while my sons are fighting like enemies? Who do you think you are?" "I'm the one who gave birth to that child," Tay shouted back. "I'm the one who sacrificed my body and mind for him. And now you stand here, supporting the same man who tried to steal him from under us? You think your pain is the only one that matters," Mama shouted. "Kola is his father. He is blood, and you have no right to stand in the way of that bond." "Mama," Tay whispered, disbelief spreading across her face. "I stood with you both years ago because it was necessary," Mama continued. "But times have changed. Kola has changed, and he is the only one who may never have another child. It is cruel to deny him this connection." Diran looked lost, trapped between his mother and his wife. "And if you two want more children," Mama said with a shrug, "go abroad. Do IVF. Adopt. Use donor sperm. You've done it once before. You can do it again. What's the difference now?" Tay shook her head, her voice cracking. "The difference is, we built a life with this child. He is not a placeholder we can trade out like a rental. You told us to take this secret to our graves." "And maybe I was wrong," Mama said bluntly. "Maybe Kola deserved better. Maybe we all should have done things differently. But it is not too late to do what is right. Right." As if handing over the child she nearly died giving birth to was just a correction. Tay turned to Diran, her last lifeline. "Say something, please." But Diran once again was silent, eyes down, shoulders heavy. And Tay realized with tears in her throat that while the family kept talking about bloodlines and sacrifices, no one was thinking about Damilare. Not the boy, not his heart, not the confusion, the trauma, the truth. From upstairs, the soft thump of music played in Damilare's room. He was safe, locked away as Tay had insisted before the meeting, blissfully unaware of the war brewing below. "I will not let you erase me from my son's life," Tay said, voice breaking but still steady. "And I won't let you bully me into silence anymore." Mama's face twisted in rage, and then she did the unthinkable. She stepped forward and raised her hand. Smack. Tay's head snapped sideways as Mama's palm connected with her face. Gasps echoed through the room. Tay stumbled slightly, blinking fast as the sting spread across her cheek, and then it all cracked. With years of buried anger rising like lava, Tay didn't hold back. She didn't slap back, but she shoved. Just one push, instinctive, meant to create space. But Mama was not steady. Her feet slipped, her arms flailed, and she fell backward. Screams erupted. But just before she hit the ground, Kola dove forward and caught her. Mama leaned into him, clutching her side dramatically like she had just survived a great tragedy. "She pushed me," she wailed. She raised her hand against her own mother-in-law. God punish her pride. The entire room turned on Tay like wolves. "She's heartless. Who does that to an elder? She's possessed. She'll never know peace." The noise was deafening. Blame rained down on her like acid. The same people who had once called her the pillar of the home now called her disgraceful, ungrateful, unworthy. But this time, she wasn't alone. "Enough!" Diran stepped forward, his voice sharper than anyone had ever heard it. The room fell silent. Even Mama stopped moaning. Diran turned to his family, eyes blazing. "You all want to crucify her because she defended herself? You forget my mother slapped her first. You forget how much Tay has suffered in this house. She has been insulted, ignored, manipulated for years. And now you expect her to hand over our child like he's some forgotten property? Mama sat upright. So you're taking her side now? Yes, Diran said without flinching. Because she's right. Damilare is ours. Kola helped us, yes. But help does not mean ownership. Kola stood, face dark. You think you can erase me, Diran? Diran walked up to him, standing eye to eye. You gave us a gift. You do not get to change the terms 7 years later because life got hard. You do not get to take what you gave. He is not yours anymore. And if you want to destroy our family over this, that's on you, not her. Tay stood still, her breathing uneven, her eyes glistening. For once, after years of suffering alone, she wasn't fighting by herself. Her husband, the man she once thought would never choose her over his family, finally did. And in that moment, everything shifted. Does Kola have a right to demand Damilare back after 7 years? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell because part 2 is coming, and it will leave you speechless.